Identifying the right amount of cash to hold is a common and foundational personal finance question. You want to strike a balance between too little and too much cash. On one hand, you want enough to cover your short term expenses, provide a reasonable safety net, and ultimately avoid financial distress. But you don't want to persistently hold too much cash because, first, over the long run, cash has barely kept up with inflation. Second, bank interest is taxed as ordinary income, so your after tax return is less than that advertised rate. And third, investments tend to outperform cash and inflation over a sufficient time horizon. My name is Bryan Minogue, founder of Cardinal Financial, and in this video, I'm going to walk through a framework to identify how much cash you should hold. This framework can be thought of as a series of 4 cascading buckets, which you should aim to fill in order of priority. Fill a bucket 1 first, then bucket 2, and so on. If you've filled these buckets, you may safely allocate any excess towards your next investment or other goals. And if any of your buckets are short of their targets, fill them up as your cash flow allows. So just what are these buckets? Bucket 1 is your main cash flow account. This is where your paychecks, portfolio distributions, pensions, etc. are deposited, and this is also where your bills are taken from, your mortgage, rent, utilities, daycare, credit card bills, and so on. I recommend keeping 1 to 2 months worth of expenses in this bucket. If you maintain 1 to 2 months worth of expenses in this checking account and monitor it on a monthly basis, you should be in good shape. You shouldn't have to worry about overdrawing the account, and also you're not keeping so much cash in a checking account that's likely earning little to no interest. Bucket 2 is your emergency fund. The target for this bucket is 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, and this should be held in a high yield savings account. This account is intended purely for emergencies. Think job loss, unexpected medical bills, or home maintenance emergencies. The more secure your personal finances, the more you can gravitate towards that 3-month rule of thumb. The less secure your financial situation and safety net, the more you should gravitate towards 6 months worth of expenses or more in this bucket. Bucket 3 is set aside for your big, non-monthly expenses. This bucket is for items like travel, auto or home maintenance, biannual or annual insurance payments, out-of-pocket medical expenses, etc. These items may only hit your cash flow once or a few times each year. Bucket 3 is here so that we're planning for and setting aside funds for these expenses so that 1, we're not surprised by them as they inevitably occur, and 2, we don't dip into our emergency fund for these non-emergencies. While you're welcome to get granular and save for each of these non-monthly expenses separately, so have an account for travel, an account for insurance, an account for home maintenance, etc., a simpler alternative is to target 50% of your annual total for these non-monthly expenses as your bucket 3. So for example, if you totaled up your non-monthly budget items at $15,000, you'd aim to keep about $7,500 set aside for these items on a recurring basis in bucket 3. As these expenses come due during the year, you can draw from this bucket to help cover the expenses and then refill bucket 3 over time. Bucket 4 is an optional bucket for short-term goals. These are big expenses that you're targeting in the next 3-ish years. This could be a new car, a home improvement project, or any other big expense or goal that is beyond your typical annual spending. Even diversified portfolios can experience significant volatility over a 3-year window, so it's recommended to save for these types of short-term goals in a high-yield savings account. So there are your 4 buckets to consider for your household's cash target. Bucket 1 is 1 to 2 months worth of expenses in your main checking account. Bucket 2 is your emergency fund with 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Bucket 3 is for your non-monthly expenses with a target of 50% of your annual non-monthly spending. And bucket 4 is for short-term goals with a time horizon of 3 years or less. Bucket 1 is held in a checking account, while buckets 2 to 4 are held in a high-yield savings account. Some institutions will allow you to create sub-accounts or buckets or vaults to differentiate between your different buckets or goals. Alternatively, you could simply sum the value of buckets 2 through 4 and use that as your high-yield savings account target. On a monthly basis, you can check in on your buckets and shift funds as necessary, prioritizing bucket 1 first, then 2, then 3, then 4. If your buckets are full, you can use any excess cash towards your next financial goal. This could be paying off high-interest debt, making additional contributions to a retirement or education savings account, or investing in a taxable brokerage account. With a monthly check-in, you can stay on top of your cash balances and right-size your cash holdings. And on a less frequent, perhaps annual basis, You can revisit your bucket framework to adjust for your life's changes and shifting priorities.